I was 17 when I learned silence can be louder than yelling, and it happened in a glass office that smelled like lemon cleaner and money. Martin did not raise his voice when he told me I was done. He did not even look nervous. He slid a thin sheet of paper across the table like it was a menu and said, "You have gotten too comfortable. We need someone hungrier." His hands were steady, mine were too, but the air went weird, like the second before a crash when everyone knows what is coming and pretends they do not. I had been there since I was a kid, literally a kid. I started helping after school when the company was still above a pawn shop and the servers rattled like old trucks. I grew up inside those systems, learned them the way other boys learned engines or video games. Every route, every failsafe, every quiet fix at 3 in the morning when alarms screamed and everyone else slept. Martin was older than me, but he inherited power, not understanding. He was the founder's son, the kind of guy who used words like synergy without knowing where the wires ran behind the walls. He did not explain what I did wrong. There was no list, no warning, no thanks. After years of building things that never broke, I folded the paper slow, sharp creases, and slid it into my backpack like homework I did not need anymore. Then I stood and looked him in the eye, not angry, not scared, just empty, and walked out. The receptionist asked if everything was okay. I set my badge on the desk and said, "Guess I got too comfortable," and pushed through the door. Outside, the city looked fake, all shine and reflection, like it was laughing at me. Every building had a piece of my brain in it. Scripts I wrote, logic I designed, quiet protections nobody noticed until they failed. I did not cry. Not on the sidewalk, not in the elevator, not in the parking garage where the gate refused my plate like I was already erased. I sat in my car, hands on the wheel, thinking how weird it was that someone who still asked me for help resetting passwords could decide I was replaceable. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. I finally looked and froze. The name on the screen was Aaron Cole, head of engineering at Northline, the company we spent years trying to stay ahead of. I answered and said nothing. He said my nickname, the one from the old days, the one nobody used anymore, and asked if it was true. I stayed quiet, because silence carries weight. Then he said, "Come here, we'll pay double. No interviews, no delays, just say yes." I put it on speaker and leaned back because right then I saw Martin walking through the garage, smug, smile ready to feel powerful again, until he heard the voice on my phone. Then another voice cut in, older, rougher, the founder himself, asking Martin if he really let go of the kid who built the backbone. Martin went pale, turned and ran, and I stayed right where I was, watching the skyline I built, knowing I was already leaving, and that this was only the beginning. So, tell me, do you want to hear what happened when the system started calling my name after I was gone? I did not go home right away after that call. I sat there longer, listening to the city hum like a living machine, breathing through wires and lights. My phone kept buzzing alerts, messages, missed calls from numbers I knew too well, but I did not answer. Because once you step out of a system you built, you finally see how fragile it really is. I drove aimlessly, windows down, cold air cutting through my head, trying to catch up with my life. 18 years of routines gone in one smooth sentence. You are too comfortable. What they never understood was comfort was never my goal. Stability was. I liked knowing things worked because I made them work, because somewhere a hospital database stayed online or a logistics line did not freeze at midnight. That mattered to me more than titles or meetings. I ended up at the old diner near the river, the one that stayed open all night and still smelled like grease and burnt coffee. I ordered a grilled cheese I did not eat and watched my phone light up again. This time I looked, it was Mia from compliance, then Josh from ops, then 3 missed calls from Martin himself, the guy who fired me, suddenly desperate. Funny how fast confidence evaporates when the floor drops out. I paid, left, and finally went home. The apartment felt quieter than usual, like it knew something changed. I dropped my bag, sat on the floor, and opened my laptop out of habit. Muscle memory kicked in, dashboards loaded automatically, alerts stacked, red and yellow, heartbeat warnings, audit flags, misaligned keys. My name still stamped across everything, like a signature they never bothered to remove because no one knew how the systems talked to each other. They thought architecture was diagrams and meetings, not instincts and scars. Around midnight, a message came through. Not a call, just text from Aaron. Tomorrow morning, contract ready, bring nothing but yourself. I stared at it longer than I should, then closed the laptop and went to sleep, for the first time in years without worrying about alarms. I woke up to chaos, not outside, but inside. My phone had exploded overnight. Dozens of messages, screenshots, internal threads, people panicking, asking where scripts were stored, who had access, why builds were failing, phase 3, why the sandbox locked everyone out. Someone even typed, "Does anyone have his personal number?" I rolled over, smiled once, then muted everything and showered. Slow, calm, like I had nowhere to rush to. Northline headquarters felt different. Clean, but not cold. People nodded when they passed me, not because of my name, but because they knew why I was there. Aaron met me in a small conference room. No glass walls, no theatrics. Just coffee and a tablet with terms already loaded. Autonomy, budget, full control over infrastructure decisions. No committee approval chains, no politics disguised as process. I signed without negotiating, because respect was already priced in. When I walked out, my phone buzzed again. Martin, this time. I answered, not to help, not to gloat, just to hear him scramble. He started talking fast. Audits, clients, flags, something about a failed update. I stopped him, said quietly, "I do not work there anymore," then ended the call. And that was it. No speech, no revenge, just distance. By noon, Northline announced my arrival. Nothing flashy, just a paragraph, my name, my role, and silence after it landed. Harder than any headline, because the people who mattered knew what it meant. By afternoon, my old company started bleeding, not loudly, just quietly. Vendors asking questions, clients reviewing contracts, investors reading between lines. The founder sent a memo I never saw, but everyone talked about. Board oversight, leadership review, damage control. I did not watch closely. I was already deep into my first build, mapping weaknesses I had memorized years ago, fixing them cleanly this time, without resistance, without ego, just work, the way it was meant to be done. That night, while the city outside blinked like nothing happened, I got one last message from a junior dev I mentored, asking if it was true they let me go, without asking what I was working on. I sent him a screenshot of my new badge, green, active, verified. He replied, "That might be the dumbest decision they ever made." And I typed back, slowly, smiling, knowing the real fallout had not even started yet, because tomorrow the systems would fail louder, and this time I would not answer. So, are you ready to see the first domino fall? The first real crack showed up 2 days after I started at Northline, and I did not hear it from news or blogs. I heard it from the machines themselves. Habits die hard even when you leave a place. The systems still speak in patterns you recognize. My old phone still mirrored public status feeds, and I noticed a strange rhythm. Small outages brushed off as maintenance, then a missed heartbeat, then a delayed recovery window. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make engineers sweat quietly in their chairs. I pictured them hunched over dashboards, refreshing logs, hoping someone else knew the answer, because the person who did was already gone. Northline moved fast, not because they were rushing, but because they trusted me to build without asking permission every 5 minutes. I set up a clean architecture from the ground up. No duct tape, no borrowed shortcuts, every access path documented, every dependency visible. Not for control, but for clarity. The team was younger than me, but sharp. They listened, asked real questions, and did not pretend to know what they did not understand. That alone felt like oxygen. By midweek, my old company pushed a patch they had delayed twice, trying to stabilize it. It went live at dawn and failed before breakfast. Nothing exploded, nothing trended, but internally, it was chaos. Compliance locks tripped, audit trails broke, and their emergency rollback refused to authenticate because the keys were chained to a logic sequence I had written years ago, one they never fully mapped because they never needed to, as long as I was there. Phones started ringing again. Not mine, theirs. Vendors, clients, regulators, all polite, all pointed, asking the same quiet thing. Are you in control? The founder called an emergency board session. Martin stood in front of people who finally realized the difference between confidence and competence. He talked fast, using slides and words, but the room stayed cold because slides do not fix broken systems. Engineers do. By lunch, an internal report circulated using the phrase institutional knowledge gap, which is corporate language for, we lost the person who knew how this actually works. Meanwhile, at Northline, we launched our first internal tool early, not to show off, but because it was ready. It slotted into their workflow like it had always belonged there, reducing onboarding time, cutting error rates, and giving visibility no one had before. One engineer laughed and said, "This feels like cheating." I shrugged and said, "It's just good design." That afternoon, a mid-tier industry blog posted a neutral piece about leadership turnover at my old company, linking it gently to recent service instability. It did not accuse, it did not speculate, it just lined up facts and let readers connect dots. Investors are very good at connecting dots. The founder reached out then, not publicly, not with apologies, just a calendar request sent directly to my new address. I accepted without comment. When he walked into the conference room alone, he looked smaller, not weaker, just older, like someone who finally noticed the cost of ignoring the foundation while polishing the roof. He said he never meant for this to happen, and I believed him. That was the tragedy. He had trusted a title instead of the work. We did not argue, we did not negotiate. He asked what Redline fixed that they could not, and I told him the truth. Nothing magical, just respect for systems and the people who build them. He left quietly, carrying the weight back with him. That evening, Northline announced a major client win, one my old company had chased for years. The press release was calm, confident, and devastating in its simplicity. Names, dates, deliverables, no hype. The phones at my old office did not stop ringing that night. People sent me screenshots, messages, rumors like postcards from a storm I had already outrun. I did not respond because I did not need to. The silence was doing the work for me. Late that night, a junior dev from my old team messaged saying the build froze again and no one knew why. I typed one sentence, then erased it and closed the app. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. And tomorrow, another system would fail and another excuse would fall apart because the collapse was no longer a moment, it was a sequence, and the next step was already in motion, and what came after would change everything. By the end of that week, the noise stopped pretending to be manageable and started telling the truth. Outages stacked, audits slipped, and every internal fix created 2 new problems because no one was steering the whole map anymore, just patching holes where the water was loudest. I could picture it perfectly. Engineers divided into war rooms, leadership hovering, asking for updates without understanding the questions they should be asking. Martin tried to take charge again, scheduling back-to-back meetings, pushing urgency instead of clarity, which only made things worse because systems do not respond to pressure, they respond to precision. At Northline, my days were calm, almost quiet, the kind of quiet that comes from things working the way they are supposed to. We built in layers, testing each piece before moving forward, and for the first time in years, I was not fighting resistance or ego, just solving problems with people who wanted them solved. The difference was unreal, like finally running on clean power instead of a generator that might fail at any second. Midweek, the first big client officially paused their contract with my old company. Not canceled, just paused, which is worse because it signals doubt. They cited stability concerns and asked for a full remediation plan, something Martin could not deliver without admitting what he did not know internally. A leaked message circulated, someone from ops asking if anyone still had access to my old documentation, another replying that most of it lived in my head, and that sentence traveled faster than any memo. The founder called again, this time not for a meeting, just a voicemail. He sounded tired, thanked me for everything I had built, and said he finally understood what it meant when people said, "You do not notice the foundation until it cracks." I did not call back, not out of spite, but because some realizations need space to settle. Northline pushed a public demo that Friday. Clean, smooth, nothing flashy, but it worked exactly as promised, which in this industry is the loudest flex of all. Analysts noticed, clients noticed, and comparisons started forming quietly online. People did not name me directly, but they didn't have to. The pattern was obvious. One company stabilizing, another unraveling. The board at my old company acted fast, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Martin was removed from day-to-day control, quietly reassigned while they searched for an interim fix. The announcement was careful, neutral, full of phrases like strategic realignment and leadership support, but everyone knew what it meant. Internally, it was already over. That night, a message came from one of the youngest engineers I had mentored back then, thanking me for teaching him how to think instead of just what to do. He said things finally made sense now that he could see what was missing. I stared at that message longer than any contract, because that was the part that mattered. The knowledge did not vanish, it moved, it evolved, it found better ground. The next Monday, Northline made me a permanent offer. Equity, authority, trust written into every line. I signed without hesitation because this place did not ask me to be louder or sharper, just honest in how I built things. News broke later that afternoon. Martin officially stepped down. No drama, no scandal, just a short notice and a photo that already felt outdated. The company would survive, probably, rebuild eventually, but it would never be the same because it learned too late that replacing quiet builders with loud talkers comes at a price you cannot spreadsheet away. I shut down my office lights that night, watched the city glow below, and felt something rare. Not victory, not revenge, just balance. The systems hummed, steady, the team trusted me, and the silence finally felt earned. And just as I reached for my bag, my phone buzzed once more with a name I did not expect and a message that promised the final chapter was about to begin. The message came from a number I had not saved, but I recognized the tone immediately. It was calm, formal, and carefully chosen, which told me it was legal or regulatory or both. The sender introduced himself as a federal oversight liaison, requesting clarification on historical system ownership related to a bid my old company had lost months earlier, the one everyone thought failed on pricing, but actually failed on continuity. I did not respond right away. I set the phone down and leaned back because that single message explained everything. My old company problems were no longer just internal, they were visible to people who do not care about excuses, only evidence. The next morning, I walked into Northline to find the team already buzzing, not panicked, just alert, like engineers feel when they know something important is unfolding. The liaison request had not been sent to me alone. It had been copied to Northline leadership as part of due diligence, and suddenly the story had shifted from one bad firing to a case study in operational negligence. I met with Aaron and legal. We did not spin, we did not posture, we just shared timelines, documentation, and clean logs showing what was built, when, and where it lived. Now everything was traceable because I designed it that way years ago, back when accountability still mattered to me. By afternoon, the Oversight Office formally reopened review on the old bid, citing material changes in system stewardship. That phrase alone sent shockwaves through the industry because it meant contracts could be reevaluated, not out of spite, but out of risk mitigation. My old company tried to respond, releasing statements promising reforms, new leadership, transparency, but reforms take time, and contracts do not wait. Meanwhile, Northline was suddenly viewed as the safer option, not because we were louder, but because we were stable. 2 more clients followed the first, pausing, then transferring quietly, efficiently, no drama, just signatures and migrations. The founder of my old company released one final internal memo thanking staff for resilience and announcing his retirement effective immediately. It was dignified and sad, and honest in a way the company had not been for years. I read it once and closed it. That chapter was done. The liaison finally called me directly, not to accuse, not to threaten, just to ask how knowledge transfer had been handled. I answered plainly. I told him the truth, that there was no transfer, because no one asked. That silence hung heavier than any complaint. He thanked me and ended the call, and I knew then the consequences were locked in, not because of me, but because of choices made long before I left. That evening, a junior engineer at Northline asked me how it felt watching everything fall apart behind me. I thought about it before answering and said it did not fall apart, it was already broken, they just stopped hiding it. Weeks passed, fast and steady. Northline grew stronger. My role expanded naturally, without ceremony. I mentored again, built again, slept through nights again. The industry chatter slowly cooled and settled into a new normal, where my old company became a cautionary tale whispered in conference halls about what happens when you confuse comfort with competence. One night, late, I stood alone in the office, watching systems run smoothly, and thought about the kid I used to be, sitting at a folding table above a dusty shop, fixing problems no one else wanted to touch. I smiled, because that kid won. Not by being loud, not by burning bridges, but by building things that lasted and walking away when it was time. And just as I turned off the lights and headed out, knowing the story was finally complete, another notification buzzed quietly, not from the past this time, but from the future, asking one simple question that would decide what I built next. The question was simple but heavy. It came from Aaron late at night, asking where I wanted to take the architecture next 5 years. Not what the company wanted, not what investors expected, but what I believed should exist if systems were built the right way. I did not answer immediately because that kind of question deserves more than instinct. It deserves honesty. I went for a walk instead, letting the city cool around me, lights blinking like signals in a network that actually worked. I thought about everything that had happened, how quickly power shifted once the truth surfaced, how fragile empires built on noise really are, and how quiet builders always end up carrying more weight than anyone realizes. When I got back, I typed slowly, telling him I wanted to build something that did not depend on heroes, something transparent, resilient, documented so well that no single person ever became a single point of failure again, even me. He replied almost instantly, saying that was exactly why he trusted me. Weeks turned into months. Northline rolled out platform after platform, each one boring on the surface, because boring means stable. Clients loved it, regulators loved it, engineers slept at night, and I finally felt like I was doing work that would outlive my title. My old company faded from daily conversation. Not gone, just smaller, reorganized, cautious. They survived, but the edge they once had never came back, because edges are built by people who care more about structure than spotlight. Every now and then, someone new would join Northline and whisper that they had heard stories about me, about what happened, about the fallout. I never corrected them, never exaggerated. Truth does not need help. One afternoon, I got an email from that junior dev I used to mentor. He had left too, joined a startup, and thanked me again. Said watching everything unfold taught him what kind of engineer he wanted to be. I closed the message feeling lighter than I had in years, not because I won, but because the lesson traveled further than I ever could. Late one evening, I sat alone in the server room, listening to the low hum, the sound that once meant stress, now meant peace. I realized then that the real ending was not the firing, not the revenge, not even the success. It was the moment I stopped tying my worth to a place that forgot why it existed. I turned off the lights, locked the door, and walked out, knowing the systems would keep running without me. And that was the point all along, because real builders do not leave wreckage. They leave things that stand. And as I stepped into the night, my phone buzzed once more, not with a crisis, not with regret, but with an invitation to build something entirely new and better. And that is where the next story truly begins.